Liam de la Cruz stood just behind the massive black curtains of the America's Got Talent stage, his small hands trembling as he clutched the microphone. The loud buzz of the audience echoed like a storm inside his chest. For a boy who had grown up singing on the sidewalks of Cebu City, this world, the bright lights, the towering stage, the distant silhouettes of famous judges, felt unreal, like he had stepped into someone else's dream. His mother stood behind him, gently fixing the collar of his simple shirt, the same shirt he had worn during school programs back in the Philippines. She whispered, "Anik, just sing with your heart. No matter what happens, I'm proud of you." Her voice was steady, but her eyes revealed the years of struggle, sacrifice, and hope layered together. Liam took one deep breath and walked out. The brightness almost blinded him at first, and the vastness of the stage hit him like a wave. Thousands of people sat before him, waiting, watching, judging. The judge's table glowed beneath the warm lights, Heidi smiling softly, Sophia flipping through her notes, Howie leaning curiously forward, and at the center, Simon Cowell, arms crossed, studying the boy with his sharp, unreadable gaze. Liam swallowed hard. Back in Cebu, people never looked at him like this. There, he was just a kid helping his father polish the jeepney in the early mornings, or selling ice candy with his mother after school. He sang to distract himself from the heat, the hunger, the heaviness of life. But here, every eye in the auditorium focused on him, expecting either greatness or failure. Simon leaned toward his microphone. "Hello, what's your name?" Liam almost forgot his own voice for a moment. "My name is Liam, from Cebu City, Philippines." A soft murmur rippled through the crowd, some surprised, some smiling, some simply curious about how far this small Filipino boy had traveled. Simon nodded slowly. "And how old are you?" 13. "And what are you going to sing?" Liam looked down at the microphone, forcing his voice to stop shaking. "A song for my parents." Sophia's face softened instantly, as if something in his tone pierced through her. Heidi gave a warm nod, encouraging him. But Simon remained still, unreadable, evaluating him like a puzzle. Liam felt his knees weaken. He wondered if Simon already expected him to fail. He wondered if everyone thought he was too ordinary, too small, too inexperienced to be on that giant stage. But he reminded himself of the nights he lay on the rooftop of their small Cebu home, staring at the stars while singing softly to himself, songs that made him forget the unpaid bills, the broken ceiling, the tired faces of his parents. He remembered his father's quiet words the night before the audition. "Anik, if you get scared, think of us. We hear you even when the world doesn't." The memory steadied him. The music started gently, like a heartbeat. The hall fell silent. Liam closed his eyes for a brief second, and in that moment, he wasn't on AGT. He was back in Cebu, barefoot on the concrete floor, feeling the humid breeze and hearing the distant sound of jeepneys passing by. Then he lifted the microphone and sang the very first note, soft, fragile, but carrying a depth shaped by years of silent battles. The audience leaned in. Even Simon's brows lifted slightly. Liam's voice floated across the room, trembling but clear, reaching people who moments earlier had doubted him. And as he opened his eyes, seeing thousands of faces frozen in surprise, Liam realized something powerful. He wasn't invisible anymore. The world was finally listening. The moment the first note left Liam's lips, a gentle hush fell over the entire auditorium. It wasn't silence born from courtesy. This was the kind of silence that only appears when people forget to breathe. His voice, soft and trembling at first, carried a raw purity that didn't match his timid posture or small frame. It felt like a voice shaped not by training, but by life, by long nights of worry, by mornings spent helping his mother sell snacks, by the weight a child shouldn't have to carry yet somehow does. As the melody rose, the spotlight softened around him, making his small figure glow like a fragile flame determined not to die out. His eyes glistened, but he wasn't crying, he was remembering. He remembered his father leaving before sunrise to drive the jeepney through Cebu's busy streets, the sound of coins dropping into the metal box, the tired smile his father forced at night. He remembered the day a heavy rain flooded their home, and his mother held him close, while everything they owned floated in muddy water. He remembered the promise he made to himself. If he ever stood on a real stage one day, he would sing not to impress, but to thank them. And so he sang. Each note he released seemed to carry pieces of those memories. His soft vibrato felt like whispered prayers. His higher notes trembled under the weight of emotion, catching Heidi by surprise. Her eyes widened and instantly filled. She brought her hand to her chest. Howie turned to the audience with a silent expression that said, "Are you hearing this?" Sophia leaned forward, her lips parting in disbelief, as though she expected the boy's voice to break, but it didn't. Then there was Simon. He sat still, but his eyes sharpened, studying Liam not like a judge but like someone hearing something rare, something he didn't expect. He wasn't smiling, but the seriousness on his face had changed. The usual skepticism had melted into something quieter, almost respectful. Every time Liam reached a high note, Simon's eyebrows moved slightly, a barely noticeable reaction that meant more than applause. The audience, mesmerized, felt the emotional rise in the song as Liam's confidence grew. His voice strengthened, his chest lifted, and for the first time since stepping onto the stage, he stood not like a nervous boy but like someone who finally understood his own worth. The music swelled behind him. His eyes closed, his hand shook slightly, and he pushed out a note so clear, so aching, it felt like time itself had paused. People in the back rows covered their mouths. Some wiped tears they didn't expect to shed. A woman whispered softly, "That voice, that's pain and hope together." Liam wasn't performing anymore. He was pouring out everything he had kept inside. The fear of failure, the longing to lift his family from hardship, the dream of someday giving his parents the life they deserved. And as the final chorus approached, his voice rose in a powerful, trembling cry that echoed across the hall. The sound vibrated through the seats, sending chills down the arms of strangers who had never met him, but suddenly felt as though they understood him. The music faded slowly, like a heartbeat coming to rest. Liam held the last note longer than expected, steady and full, before letting it fall gently into silence. His shoulders dropped. His hands loosened. A tear slipped down his cheek, not from fear, but from release. Then the hall exploded. Gasps. Cheers. A thunder of applause. People stood to their feet so quickly that the judges, caught in the emotional shock, took a second to rise. And in the center of it all, Liam blinked through the stage lights, breathing hard, realizing he had just delivered the performance of his life. For a moment after the final note faded, Liam stood frozen, unsure if everything happening around him was real. The applause crashed against him like a wave, loud and overwhelming, but all he could hear was the pounding of his own heartbeat. His chest rose and fell quickly, a mix of exhaustion and disbelief. The spotlight warmed his face as confetti from previous acts shimmered faintly on the stage floor. He blinked rapidly, trying to steady himself, but the sheer intensity of the standing ovation made his knees feel unsteady. The audience didn't sit down. They clapped louder, some cheering his name even though they had just learned it. A group of Filipino spectators near the front waved tiny Philippine flags they had brought. "Just in case," they cried openly, shouting, "Mabuhay!" and "Proud of you, Liam!" Their voices cut through the noise, reaching the boy who had once believed the world would never look his way. Sofia Vergara was the first judge to speak, her hand still pressed against her heart. "Liam, I felt every single word you sang," she said, her voice trembling with sincerity. "It wasn't just beautiful. It was emotional. It was painful. It was hopeful. You brought us into your story." Heidi nodded vigorously, tears still sparkling in her eyes. She leaned forward and said softly, "You have a rare gift, sweetheart. A voice with truth. A voice that touches people." Howie Mandel pointed toward the audience. "Look at them," he said. "That reaction, that doesn't happen unless someone connects deeply. And you did that. You didn't just sing, you opened your soul on this stage. And we all felt it." Then everyone looked at Simon. The theater seemed to quiet, almost automatically, as if the entire room knew that this moment mattered more than the rest. Simon Cowell leaned toward his microphone, but before speaking, he simply looked at Liam for a few seconds, long enough for tension to coil in the air. His expression wasn't his usual stern one. Instead, it was something unexpectedly gentle, something thoughtful, something that hinted at emotion he wasn't used to showing publicly. "Liam," he began, his British accent carrying softly across the silent hall, "when you walked onto this stage, you looked shy, nervous, unsure of yourself. And I think many people here, including myself, didn't expect what just happened." He paused, taking a breath. "I've been judging for a long time. I've heard thousands of singers from every corner of the world. But what you just did, that comes from a place deeper than talent. That comes from life experience, from love, from struggle." Liam's eyes widened, blinking rapidly as Simon continued. "You sang with honesty, pure honesty. And that's something you can't teach. That's something you're born with." Simon straightened in his chair, his expression shifting from impressed to something closer to proud. "This was one of the most emotional performances I've ever heard from a young singer your age." And then, without warning, Simon reached out and pressed the golden buzzer. The crowd erupted once more, louder, brighter, electric. Gold confetti rained from the ceiling like a storm of tiny stars, spinning and shimmering as they fell onto Liam's hair, his shoulders, his trembling hands. His mother ran from backstage, tears streaming, wrapping him in a tight embrace as he broke down crying. The judges stood, clapping, smiling through their own tears. Liam looked up through the glittering shower, overwhelmed and breathless, realizing something life-changing. A boy from Cebu City had just won over the world.